I'm Mike, and this week I made this trunk for stage with cool, unique glittery branding. So let's roll the intro.
So, step one is, as it always is in my workshop, really awkwardly trying to split an 8x4 sheet. For this I'm using 12mm ply, and it's pretty simple. We're just going to make a box, we're going to do some interesting things to make it look fancy, and just move from there. So I'm just going to use my track saw to do all my length cuts here. So I have two widths that I need to get off this to do the sides and the top, and I just mark it all up and with the saw. If you're a constant watcher of my videos, you might recognize this little baby that I'm using to cut these to length. The card will be up there just above you. It's a very handy tool to have, and it costs nothing. It's just made out of scrap. So there's loads more cutting that goes on here, and then we have our four sides and our top. Anytime you're making something like this, I will always pre-bore, pre-countersink. It helps to stop everything breaking out and make sure that all the screws are below the surface. All these screws are covered by framing later on, but I want to make sure they're well sunk and well connected. And especially in 12mm, you need to be very careful not to blow it out. So rather than using a standard 4mm screw here, I use a 3.5. That 1/2mm makes a huge difference in terms of splitting, particularly if you're going into the edge of the ply. We don't want to break it out. I go along then when I have it done, and I'm just eyeing here where the center is with my drill, and I'll drill these and countersink them, and then we move on to assembling it. And when I'm doing this, I'm making sure to take note of where the top is going to be cut. So for this, I'm going to make a full 4-sided box and then cut through the sides to create the lid. This is the best method for making boxes and ensuring the lid sits. So I want to make sure I don't put a screw right where that joint is going to be. And then it's only a matter of putting all the screws in the world into this thing. Assembling boxes or carcasses, you might as well call this a carcass, on your own, is just about the least fun thing you can do. So I recommend making friends to hang around the workshop with you, or just get good at doing it really awkwardly like I am. Either way, let's speed this up and get all 4 sides ready to go. For the base of this unit, I'm going to do a little bit of theatre magic. We want it to look like this is really heavy and being pushed by the cast. In this case, I made it for a panto, so it was the twits. So in order to do that, what I'm doing is setting the bottom of my trunk about 5mm less deep than the height of my caster. So when I have the bottom in and I screw on my casters and I turn it over, there'll be like a 5mm gap under this that'll allow it to be pushed, but not so much of a gap that it seems like to the audience that it's on casters. So I'll just mark that out. Then we frame around it, pop in the bottom, and then we'll put on the top. This frame goes on all 4 sides around, and I've glued and pinned it. I will eventually screw down through it to give it strength. The reason for this, maybe, being a little bit over-engineered, gluing it, pinning it, and screwing it, is that there is a good chance that eventually someone will decide, oh, it'll be funny to have someone pop out at this. So always plan for things that might happen. That's rule 1 that I found when making props and set pieces. It should always be adaptable to the situation going forward, particularly if it's something like this that can be reused umpteen times. So in fitting the top here, I'm using a technique that is extremely useful. So if you're making something like this, in this case it's a top, but if it was the back and you want to make sure it's square, what you need to do is work off 2 known square edges. In this case, I made sure that on my top I left the bottom and side of the sheet cut as it came to me. These are generally square enough for this purpose. I'll then screw along one end. I like to start at the short end and make sure that's on line, and then I'll go to the opposite side, the sheet cut, and line up that long edge. That means then that one corner is perfectly square, and if you cut everything exactly the same, but the whole thing should be perfectly square. So that's just something to keep in mind the next time you're doing a project. If you're making a box, you're making a cabinet, and you want to make sure that it's square, make sure that you leave the bottom and side cut on the sheet untouched, and use that then as your reference to line everything up and get everything perfectly square. And now it's time to separate our lid from the box. Like I said, this technique ensures that your lid and the base of your box are going to perfectly match. If you make it separate, you can run into the issue of, well, them not lining up. So all you need to do is just follow that cut line on all 4 sides, and then just like that, you're at the end, and it separates, and you have a perfect lid for your box. Simple as that. And here you can see me installing the casters on the underneath. Like I said, the top of the wheel of the caster is only about 5mm above the sides. This creates that nice floaty effect that makes it look like it's not on wheels, so we can act to make it look like it's really heavy, whereas it glides as smooth as silk. So the goal of this project is to have it look like an old steamer trunk, which would have had a wooden frame and then wooden panels that would be covered in paper or leather or a similar material to make them waterproof. What I'm doing here is just using a combination of 6mm ply to create my outer edges, and then 4mm to create those inner parts. And then what I do in the final stage is I'll paint the inside panels black and leave this ply the natural colour to give that two-tone effect that you would see on these trunks and really make it bounce. with it all framed out, we're almost at the end here in terms of making stuff. So I'm starting out here. I'm going to put a piano hinge on the back. Nice, strong support for this. I won't make you watch much more of this because there are, well, 50 or 60 screws to go in. But yeah, so with that done then, I start adding all the little accoutrement. So I got these corner protectors on Amazon, I think, and just sprayed them gold to give that brassy, older effect. So I'll add one to all the corners of the top and all the corners on the bottom. The next thing then is to add the support or the catch, whatever you want to call it, to stop the lid opening too far. In this case, I just use some, I suppose, what would you take to call it? It's a material I bought to get a belt. It's a nylon strap. I just tack those in with some upholstery tacks, and that then stops the lid opening too far and the whole thing tipping over and breaking hinges and all that kind of malarkey. And now the finishing starts. So as I said, I'm keeping the ply framing I put on this natural colour. So I'm actually going over it first just with some Danish oil. Hail surprise to anyone who watches my videos. Oh, I missed my chance. And now it's Danish oil time. So when I have this done, like I said, I'll paint the panels black. I'll paint the inside black. And we'll have our completed, quote unquote, trunk. But there's one little bit of fanciness we're going to add. So the last little bit of fanciness we're going to add here is we're going to put the owner character's name on it in glitter, as befits a dame. So in order to transfer this, I used a very old school method. I think we've all done in primary school. I put pencil all over the back and then just traced over to get the lines. And I was going to paint all my letters in here with glue. And then we'll put some glitter on top of it. here it is in the theatre, just moments before the show was about to begin. So thank you all, as always, for staying to the end of the video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And I will see you next week. And absolutely do try this at home.